So welcome back. This is part two with Mr. Alan Altizer. Hopefully you enjoyed part one. We went over all kinds of information, and we're going to hopefully cover just as much information here in just a few minutes. So we hope you enjoy. Alan, before we jump into part two, is there anything we should know or think about before we go into this new information?
Well, one of the things that the viewer really needs to remember here that it's not so much hunting this open ground, but what this open ground represents. And that's what's so important about this. It shows the topography, the way the thermals ray are run through it, how the prevailing winds run, and something real important for them to remember, not just the ridges, these finger ridges and drainages that tie into the main ridge that we're going to, but that the fence lines, the brush lines, all of this represents edge lines inside of the forest.
Right.
And again, the reason I wanted to do this whole segment is that it can see the lay of the land without the trees. And these simple fence lines, edge lines, brush lines, bedding thickets, they represent everything that's internal inside of the woods, whether you're hunting public land, big mountains, or, just farm country that's wooded much more than where we're at. So it's something that's really important to remember here. These dropping scape.
Oh,
See?
yeah. That's a lot.
Okay, remember when we buried Katie, I told you come over and look here on the knob. And right there's that scrape. Right there.
Yep.
Just don't get any closer, but look, there's still tracks in it. They're slightly washed, but they're still there. A lot of droppings. You can see where the deer have been in here too a little bit. But the reason we have this scrape here, this is the fence line we've been walking up, showing you the turkey track down below, the bedding thicket. And this is just one travel corridor into here that leads into our final stand, one of several. But the deer, while they scrape right here, it's a high topographical feature right here. It's level. They have to have level to scrape. You find scrapes on the side of the hill. I call them agonistic scrapes. They're antagonized. They're mad. They're angry. And a lot of times you'll get scrapes that way. They don't mean anything other than a buck got frustrated. This, in turn, is communication scrape. You can see where the branches were broken off, and when I originally spotted this and told Gabe, I saw the branch hanging down. But I knew because of the topographical feature there would be a scrape here. So this leads on up, and what it does, it goes into another thicket where 2 or 3 other drainages come into. What all this does, it hourglasses down into 1 or 2 spots on top of the hill where we choose to hunt. But we start hunting these bucks a quarter to a half mile or a mile away. We start out a mile away at the food source, and we're figuring out which way they come in. And what we try to do is get as many of these corridors like this bottlenecked into one area. And with these fence crossings that we've put in, we are able actually to direct them in. So we'll walk on up here into this cedar thicket, and we'll show you some other little spots we've done and where the deer come from.
All right, so you're talking about several different types of scrapes here. So not all scrapes are created equal. Not all scrapes are used for the same thing. So dive in just a second, Alan, on exactly what makes a scrape, which scrape, and how or why you would use that particular scrape.
Well, the most important factor in any scrape is the branch. The ground doesn't have as much to do with it as the branch that's over it. But what happens, scrapes develop differently throughout the year. There's like boundary scrapes that mark the edge of fill lines, or actually uh, the edge of a buck's territory that he travels and walks. And these are kind of just like a dog peeing on a bush. Same thing. And for every scrape you see, if you watch a buck walk a brush line or a fill line, you'll see him. He may stop and scrape once or twice, but he will be checking out branches and licking branches all down through there. That's their way of scent marking. So early season, you see a lot of these edge line scrapes and a lot of scrapes developing around. And it's simply the bucks setting up the pecking order, letting other bucks know I'm in the area, communicating that. As you go closer to the rut, the scrapes change. May come into an area and find two or three really good scrapes, some rubs right there that never get hit again. But especially sometimes little clusters, and you'll even go up and just see little places just pawed out and for no apparent, but a lot of these are antagonistic scrapes that they're trying to antagonize, they're trying to intimidate, they're aggressive in nature, and it's simply like a bull out pawing in a field.
Right.
Well, then other areas you'll have these transition areas that they end up having a communication scrape in. And just like this knoll we're looking at here, bucks coming from two different directions. This is a good area for him not only let the other bucks know that I'm in the area, but the does to let him know in the area. And then when you get on up above next to the thickets or back in the thickets where you have a lot of doe bedding and all, you may get into your breeding, your community scrapes
Yeah.
in there that, all the deer come to, but especially the does. But the factors to really remember on a scrape that's worth using or worth their attention, that branch, a well-worn branch off it that's getting repeated use over and over. It's going to be on level ground. It's going to be on damp ground as
Hmm.
much as possible. The reason is that dampness holds the scent longer, and they really like that. So when you find, on the side of a hill a scrape pawed out, that's not a scrape he's going to be coming back to. If the branch is just broken but not really repeatedly hit, it shows you he's traveling that area, but he's not going to be revisiting. But when you can find out those branches or find them that are worn off, that have been used over and over, and I know of scrapes that are 30, 35 years old now,
Right.
that the branches are as big as my thumb. When it gets knocked off, there'll be another one right next to it, but they'll still be going and they'll be there. And the topographical features affect these and their locations. So it's a lot to look for in them. But, the scrape's just one little piece of the puzzle. That shows where he's traveling. What we're doing with this video, showing while they're traveling, what areas are most advantageous
Right.
for the most deer to travel through. And then in turn, the relation to that is how the buck uses that travel route a little bit differently to monitor everything in his area. Well, old water troughs probably seen more bucks than we have.
Yeah, it's been there for 3 or 4 years.
I know it. That's one of the best things we did for here to keep the deer healthy, plus kind of pattern them out where we want them. This is inside the last cedar bench that coming up before we go to our stands. The old water trough we put in here for two reasons, again, just like the ones down below, that it helps with EHD. We keep them clean out, clean water for the deer. And the second thing, it establishes a travel pattern throughout the hot months, throughout the summer. And if it's dry in the wintertime, they'll be on up. We've come in and here during February and March and actually seen where they busted the ice out in these things. But anyway, this comes up into this cedar bench, and this is right on the edge of the field that we started out at the head of to start with. Now right here, there was a scrape got established under that shrub right there some years ago. And what we've done, we started a mock scrape, and you can see it on the ground, and they've taken over it. You can look here how high these branches are over it now where they've broken it off. The rub's in there, like right beside of it. So we've established a good corridor in here. We're funneling these deer in, and this is just one of three drainages that come in and make that stand on top of the hill so good, so productive. And when I say stand on the hill, we've actually got 4 stands out that fence line that we set just due to minute wind changes or time of the day. So anyway, this is how we've necked these deer down. But the thing to remember, what we've done here happens naturally in nature. So if you go in and really scout out the drainage the whole way through, you can come up and figure out where these bucks are coming to. And when you can find 2 or 3 corridors that come together at one spot and bottleneck down, you stand a whole lot better chance at getting a deer. The last thing I'll show you, and we'll head back up, out in the field, there's a mound out there in the field. These deer, because of the houses down here, when they come out right here at this trail or this trail over here, they like to walk this side of the mound. They like to stay away from it and head up. So that funnels them on towards us. It's just that little visual rise pushes them over. They see it just like top of a ridge walking the downhill side. They do the same thing. So that's one of the things to remember. Those little minute changes make a huge difference. We'll show you one other little spot out here before the top of the hill, and we'll try to wrap it up. Maybe it'll help you guys out a little bit.
Okay, so before you go in depth on this video with a killer explanation of thermals, why do I, as a bow hunter, and maybe if I'm a guy watching this video and I'm a young bow hunter or a new bow hunter, why do I care? Why is this word such a buzzword that you'll see on these videos a lot, or on our videos or the podcast? Why is that something we hear a lot? What is the importance, and how can I use that?
Okay, first thing, the definition of a thermal. What is the thermal? And it's just a different pressure of the air, and it's caused by heat. And I'll give a perfect example: hot air balloons. The reason they rise, the air is lighter in density, and it raises, it picks up the balloon. Cold air, you think about dry ice in a cup sitting on a table. The cool fog drops off of the table. That's cold air. It's denser, it's heavier. So the thermal is just air that's affected by gravity. And what causes the gravitational effect on it is the density. The lighter the air, the warmer the air, it rises. The cooler the air, it falls. So that's the biggest thing. Just think about, people say think about water. You think about water on cold thermals, on
Mm,
cooling thermals,
yeah.
not the rising thermals. Now we all look at the prevailing winds, which way that wind's blowing, but your thermal can be dropping, completely opposite of your prevailing wind. And if it's a cold thermal, it's going to be dropping under your prevailing wind or causing a lot of eddies. If it's a warm thermal, it'll be more than likely from your stand to be carried with the prevailing wind. And
Mhm.
I've talked about shaded areas, under foliage and all, just small shaded. You'll have a dropping thermal underneath, even though it's a warm day, it'll still be that ground thermal. So, this area we're looking at here really exemplifies to me the relationship between thermals and prevailing winds, how each affects the other. So when you're looking at stand placement, you can't think, yeah, I've got a prevailing west wind, I'm good here on the side of this hill, and that deer's going to walk under me, because late evening, boom, the thermals are going to drop. And that's the other thing with the thermal, that they change throughout the day.
Yeah.
Morning you have dropping thermals, evening dropping thermals, midday you'll start have rising thermals. Midday, that's a sunny day. On an overcast day, it may stay dropping, or where you really don't have a thermal. And
Mhm.
so what happens there, the scent cone off your body, it rises because of your body heat. The vortex goes up, it cools with the ambient air temperature, and then it mushrooms out and it falls back to the ground. On dead, calm days like that, the air cooling, once it rises, it drops back to the earth because it's moisture laden. From the moisture off your body, it drops and it mushrooms out, and it can go in 360 degrees around you. So you have a thermal there, and that's one that people never think about. And that's one of the worst places in a low bottom to be hunting on a cool morning, where your thermals drop, because it'll saturate all that whole bottom in every direction. So, you know, there's a lot of aspects, but you have to look at the relationship between the prevailing and the thermal will be dictated by the time of day and the heat of the day. So that's, you have to, you know, the hunter has to be aware of that relationship and work them together. And it's not that hard to do.
Right. Man, that's awesome. That's by far the best explanation of thermals I've ever heard. We're gonna have to save that chunk, Alan, put it in the archives somewhere. Absolutely awesome.
This spot is known as Gabe's Corner because Gabe has killed a ton of deer right through this area. For the first time this year, I shot a nice 9-point here, so he was nice enough to let me shoot one. So, well, I wanted to talk to you about this spot. It exemplifies the use of thermals as good as anywhere I could show the dynamics of thermals. Now, as you see right now, midday, sun's up. It's probably 1, 2 o'clock now. The sun is up. What we have is an east-west ridge line running this way. There's a corner fence line comes in right out this way. There's a drainage that pops in right here, a break, a saddle in the ridge, a heavy bed and thicket down this way. So deer filter out and filter into this way. The major bedding area is over through this area. Nobody hunts it. It's just a great location. Yeah, there goes a bunch of deer. Yeah. So they heard us talking. We'll show you why they heard us talking here in a little bit. But what happens when the sun is overhead like this, it's heating the side of this hill up. This is north. We have a southeasterly sun. The sun comes up over here, travels out over this way to the southwest. So it's heating up the surface of this hill all day long. Well, the last 30 minutes, right after sunset and towards it, even with a north wind, what happens? The north wind comes in from this direction. The heat off of this is rising hot enough to carry our scent across and away from the bottom. Even deer coming out by looking at the north wind dead below us right here, or over under that big oak over there, don't wind us. The scent gets blown up and away from them. Plus the thermals coming down through this draw in the late evening are sliding it this way. So the north wind, it comes up, it rises, and it's being pulled downhill. So even though we have a north wind hitting us coming straight this way, working with the thermal here on a sunny day, and the cold thermal dropping from the bottom, we've got two different thermals working. A rising one off of the warm hillside, the cool one out of the bottom after dark. The scent comes up and it's pulled downwind. Where deer wind us, standing right here on a day like today, is right down there. That's where they smell us, and we just saw it with those deer busting out of here. So that's something to think about on thermals, how it works. The last thing also, if you look, that area is over in the shadows there. So it's cooler, there's a heat differential there in the shadows. So that scent will actually be dropping down the hill right there. And in late evening, even more so. As it gets cool, the wind coming down this way from the hollows up above us, and in conjunction with that one pulls it that much quicker down below. And Gabe and I, like I said, I shot a 9-point right over under that oak tree this year. Gabe shot a deer right over here when we had northerly winds coming in and we weren't winded. So again, I just want you to realize the dynamic of thermals, because here you actually have 4 winds to take in consideration. Your predominant north or your predominant west, but your predominant wind on a sunny day, you have the heat rising off this for an hour after dark, still raising this scent, so it lifts the prevailing wind, and then the thermals from below and coming through pushes the wind down. So it's really a dynamic place for thermals. So just wanted to give you that little pointer.
So it sounds like there are a lot of things that go into making a spot a good spot or a great spot or a spot that gets a name, like Gabe's Corner. And it sounds like those factors aren't always there, or maybe they're not always the same, but they're always important.
They're not. And the thing is, you got to hunt smart.
Yeah.
We only hunt these areas when conditions are right. And like Gabe's Corner, we've got 4 to 5 different factors that lay in there that have to be right before we step into it. All the other spots through this video, the same way. There's a lot of days that, we don't hunt this. And this area I'm showing you, we don't hunt it all the time. We
Yeah.
jump in, we jump out, we jump in, we jump out. But we may get 5 days a year that's good to hunt these areas, and we jump in and we hunt them during that time. Otherwise, we don't, because we educate our deer.
Yeah.
We go to another place or we don't hunt.
Right.
So, and with this whole segment, the big thing is just trying to show people how everything interacts together. And
Right.
so each of these little intersections has factors that play in before you can hunt it. And that's what you have to realize. Don't look at just the 50-yard square you're in.
Right.
Look at the half-mile square you're in and how everything else leads there. Because you may be great setting right here, but your long-range scent may end up a mile down below there, and you think you have the perfect wind. Well, everything, knows you're there. And I've said this before in the podcast, that a lot of times you'll be sitting in a stand, perfect wind, and you hear deer blowing 2 ridges over, or way down below you, and that's the place to hunt, because I promise you that all of these animals, if it's a destination point, they will long range scent check that destination point at every opportunity. And sometimes, you may be sitting in the best spot, but that's not the best spot to kill him. The best spot is where he's blowing at you. So when you hear repeated, blows from that area, pay attention to it and look in. But I hope everybody sees, how topography, terrain, brush lines, and winds all work together off this. That's why we're hunting the open country here, showing it to you, so you can actually see how it all works together.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty. I think it does a pretty good job of explaining that. And to be honest, I think somebody could watch these videos just from this and become a better bow hunter this fall, because I think all this stuff is obviously very important. Alan, we can't thank you enough again. I know I said this on the first part, but thank you again for coming on. If you like this kind of thing, I said this before on the last one too, but do go check out the Woodsmanship series on the podcast. We have Alan on a lot. We try to guilt him into coming on at least once a month and talking about this kind of thing. And so we went from everything from rattling and scrapes to we talked about thermals. We've talked about all kinds of stuff on there, and I'm sure we will as we go on in the future. So go check that out if you want to. Also, if you like this kind of thing, go down and hit the subscribe button. We're hoping to get some more of this content going out. This was the 2-part series with Alan Altizer. Obviously, the next one coming out is going to be with Nathan Killen. So be on the lookout for that. But hopefully you've enjoyed, and hopefully you've learned something. I know, Alan, I don't know if you've seen the first part, but within hours there were comments like, I wonder where Alan Altizer's been. There's Alan Altizer's. I watched him a long time ago. And I think, Alan, there was a whole lot of talk of you sneaking up on a buck in your socks in the mud. That seems to be the hunt. That's the Alan Altizer hunt. And when I watch that video, that's my favorite too. So
yeah. Yeah.
That was a cool hunt. But anyways, and actually I think
opportunity.
that was awesome, man. That was absolutely awesome.
If you don't go for it, it's all on you.
Hey, listen, and if you watch that hunt, those of you that have seen these videos know what we're talking about. You're dealing with a smart man when he takes off one pair of his socks and puts them in his backpack and wears the other pair to stalk in, and he's still got a clean pair. That was, I caught that. That was some smart thinking there. So anyway,
it wasn't my first rodeo on that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, stay tuned for the next episodes. And hopefully you're out shooting your bow, getting ready for the fall. It's going to be here before we know it. I know we're ready. Alan, I know you're ready. And I definitely know Gabe's ready from the shooting we saw earlier. So hopefully it'll be an awesome fall.
Oh, it will make it one. We'll have fun.
That's right. That's right.